late birds. Birds are triggered from migration by day length. And I always say the birds in Costa Rica and Mexico don't know what the weather's like in Kansas City. Their bodies are triggered by the lengthening of day length of sunlight for them to know when it's time to migrate and start fattening up for their journey north. And they start moving north and gradually make their way up here. And usually the average return date for our area here in Kansas City, so I know there's a lot of people watching from other different places all across the country, but average return date here is about mid-April, April 15th. We always say tax day because it's easy to remember. So that's when but I personally like to have my hummingbird feeder out around the first week of April. So I'll put mine out maybe Monday when I'm off. I'm going to mix up my nectar, but when you put those hummingbird feeders out early in hopes of attracting an early bird that comes in, remember, don't fill the feeder all the way up. Just fill it maybe a quarter full at the most, because again, you're going to have to keep that nectar fresh. It's just like making a batch of Kool-Aid. You wouldn't put your Kool-Aid pitcher with Kool-Aid in it out on the deck railing and go out there and pour a glass every day without sitting in the sun. That's kind of what you're doing with a hummingbird feeder. You've got to keep that nectar fresh. So mix up a batch, put it in the refrigerator where you can easily keep it up to 2 weeks, but only put a little bit in your hummingbird feeder. In these temperatures, because we're really mild right now, you can usually leave it in there maybe 3 or 4 days. Now if it's in direct sunlight, that might shorten that. But you want to keep that fresh. Just pour out that's in there and put fresh in there and keep it, because that's so important for the health of hummingbirds. But what you're trying to do, tips for attracting hummingbirds to your yard, by getting out that feeder earlier, what you're really hoping is to attract a male, because males are the ones who establish territories. And there's a big long word called resource defense polygyny, and that is he attracts multiple females to his territory because of a good, dependable food source, which can be a hummingbird feeder. Now, a hummingbird feeder by itself is not always enough to catch a hummingbird's eye. It might be. Now, almost all hummingbird feeders are red. Why are they red? Why is there no yellow on here? Two good questions. We've talked about this before. We know through studies that bees tend to not nectar on red and orange flowers. They tend to nectar on other color flowers. And hummingbirds tend to favor the red and orange flowers because I think they know that there's a more dependable source of nectar there, because the bees don't tend to nectar from them. So red is an important color. That's not to say that hummingbirds will only feed from red or orange. I don't want that myth out there. They'll feed from all color flowers. Right now, the earliest planting in my yard that opens up right now is golden currant. Nice, beautiful yellow flowers, and they nectar on those. So they will feed on all colors. One of my favorite native plants is Ohio buckeye or yellow buckeye, and they're opening right now. And that is one of the first plants available to hummingbirds that are returning early. The earliest hummingbird I've ever seen in Missouri, April Fool's Day, several years ago. And that bird was actually licking on sap that was oozing out of a yellow-bellied sapsucker hole in the tree, and they was going up and licking the sap because hardly anything was blooming on April Fool's Day that year. So that hummingbird was having to get by on what he could, and they will lick on sap. So that's an early bird. So hummingbird feeders placed out early in April, if there is an early bird who comes in, they're quite often very important for those hummingbirds whenever they arrive. And that is, they have to find that food source. And if that hummingbird sets up territory on your feeder, then you might have hummingbirds all summer long. Now, what are some of the other tricks, other than I said one hummingbird might not be enough to catch that hummingbird's eye? Well, think about landscaping. Like I said, my golden currant, native plants are important, and the early ones that open up early give them a very important food diversity in their diet, and that's great. Potted plants, hanging baskets that have red flowers are great to put out now. But another old trick that's used a lot is to fool the hummingbirds, and that is by just using like an old Christmas bow, red Christmas bow from your Christmas decorations. you can stick those up around your hummingbird feeder, and the hummingbirds will come up to them. And of course, it's not going to hurt them. They're just going to try to stick their bill and try to drink from it. But catching their eye is what is important. They'll, once you get all those that red color, then they'll find that hummingbird feeder and nectar from that. Another trick is using a red hood. The red hood, this is great weather protection for your hummingbird feeder, but that additional red color will help attract them to that. Also, red nectar protectors or ant moats that you put up. Any additional red color is good to catch the hummingbird's eye and just catch it. Now, the question comes, do you have to use red nectar? No, you don't have to use red nectar, because as I tell people, I have never seen a hummingbird fly up and put his eye to the hummingbird feeder to check out to see what color the nectar is inside. So cleared hummingbird nectar is just fine. And if you do want to use red hummingbird nectar, try to find hummingbird nectar that the red color comes from a natural dye. The ones we carry, they use hibiscus flower to color the water instead of red chemical dye number or whatever. And so we want to stay away from those dyes. But if you have a natural dye, then red color is okay to use, but clear is fine. They're keyed in on the red hummingbird feeder itself. Now, earlier I said there's no yellow on the hummingbird feeders. That's because what we said earlier about the bees. Bees are attracted to the color yellow. So good quality hummingbird feeders tend to stay away from the yellow color, especially on the flowers, because that tends to attract the bees, and hummingbirds and bees don't get along very well whenever they're competing for the same food source. So use your landscaping, use your potted plants, use any where you can get flowers out early. The diversity of diet is important to them. Now your food resource is going to be key to that male to attract multiple females, and he can have up to 9 females in his harem, but they will be coming in later. Those females come in after the male. So get those hummingbird feeders out. Make sure you're maintaining and keeping them clean, and hopefully you'll have hummingbirds all summer long to help you enjoy the time outdoors. So the red bow trick's pretty cool. If you got any other ones, please comment it on below. We'd love to hear your ideas on helping attract them. So great idea for a program. Thanks for it. Send them in. Give us a like. Give us a share. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. Until next week, come by. Let's talk birds.